There are forests that do not simply exist on maps. They live in the memory of the land itself, in the primal fear humanity has carried since the first trembling step out of the cave. And in the ancient Slavic world, there is one such forest, an expanse that does not belong entirely to this side of existence. The locals had many names for it, but all whispered the same idea: the border of two worlds. A place where life and death do not touch, as a line drawn in soil, but as a breath of cold air, a jagged wind, a shadow far too long for the tree that casts it. When storytellers lead you toward that forest, their voices drop to a hush, as if afraid the woods themselves are listening. They say, to walk into this forest is to step into a vacancy waiting for a new soul to fill it. In ancient Slavic belief, such a place was called a liminal space, no longer belonging to the living, not yet surrendered to the dead. It was like a thin crack between realms, and a single misstep, a single breath out of rhythm, could make the living slip into the other side. The Slavic forest, especially the eastern regions where the legend of Baba Yaga begins, has always felt unreal, as if it resists the rhythm of the ordinary world. Many swear they walked for hours while the sun clung to the same corner of the sky, powerless to pierce the canopy. The earth remained damp and cold, no matter how hot the summer burned outside its borders. And most unsettling of all, the forest felt as though it was watching. Modern science calls it hallucination. But those who live near the tree line, whose ancestors rest beneath this soil, insist they know the sensation well. It is not the fear of being lost, not the fear of beasts. It is a presence, heavy, old, and impossible to classify, as ghost, creature, or the forest's own consciousness pressing against your skin. If you wander deep enough at dusk, the air begins to change. The first sign is the wind. It halts mid-whisper, as if some unseen hand stopped it in its tracks. Then comes the silence, thick, tangible, pressing against your eardrums. And then the strangest thing, the shadows of the trees no longer follow the sun. They tilt toward you. Old hunters say that is the first warning you have gone too far. It is the moment the forest begins to acknowledge you. And if the forest sees you, something else will know you are coming. Its name is carried in every fractured gust of air: Baba Yaga. Legends claim that before Baba Yaga reveals herself, the forest sends signs to test whether you are truly seeking her or merely a lost wanderer who should turn back while you still can. People often ask, what are the signs? The answer varies, but three are nearly universal. The first, the wind calls your name, not the usual howl through branches. It resembles a human voice, unclear, warped, but unmistakably directed at you. Some hear their own names whispered from ahead. Others hear the names of the long dead. The second, the tree's shadows shift. Not just tilting, they stretch, extend toward you, reaching like arms, attempting to fold you into their embrace. Those who witness this rarely stay, and the tales say that those who run never return the same way. They vanish among the trunks, swallowed whole by the woods. The third, absolute silence. A silence that is not natural. Forests are never quiet. There is always something living, moving, breathing, but here, all sound ceases in an instant. Not dimming, dying. Those who survive describe it as standing in someone's chamber, a someone vastly more powerful than you, and that someone has just stepped in behind you. The ancient Slavs believed the forest was not simply home to beasts and wandering spirits. The forest was a being, an old awareness, not quite God, not quite demon. And in this boundary realm, Baba Yaga was its representative, or its archivist, or perhaps its voice. No one knows for certain, but all agree on this. When the world begins to bend, when space feels as though it is tightening around you, that is the final sign. It means you have reached the edge where two realities prepare to overlap, like panes of glass pressed together, until the slightest fracture will make everything on the far side bleed through. From that moment on, the path back is no longer yours to choose. People of old believed every forest had a center, but the forest of Baba Yaga is different. Its center is not geographical. It appears only when the forest decides. You may walk endlessly and never find it, unless the woods want you to. And when the doorway finally opens, the first thing waiting behind it is not Baba Yaga herself, but her impossible hut, a house that walks, a creature of timber and bone, perched on trembling chicken legs, looming through the mist. But that is the story of the next chapter. For now, remember only this. In Baba Yaga's forest, your fear is never yours alone. It is always heard, and it is always answered. They say that when the forest has recognized you, when the shadows of the trees begin to lean towards you, though the wind has not shifted, when silence becomes an invisible veil settling over every breath, you must understand that the door has opened. Not a door of wood or metal, but the doorway of an ancient will, a will that decides who may cross the threshold between life and death. And in that very moment, between drifting mist and the last exhale of dying sunlight, you will see it, the hut standing on chicken legs. At first, you may think your eyes deceive you. A warped silhouette among the trees, a shape resembling a woodcutter's crude cabin. But then you realize the shadow is moving, not by wind, not by exhaustion. The cabin itself is shifting, carried by enormous chicken legs, gnarled, cracked, dry as fossilized bone. Each time it lifts a foot, the forest floor trembles, the earth giving a long, weary sigh. Talons sink into the damp soil, pulling up clumps of ancient moss as if the creature were feeding on the forest's memories. The hut does not simply walk. It moves with the rhythm of a thinking being. It stops when you stop. It steps forward when you retreat half a pace. It tilts its body, almost as if listening to the pounding of your heart. Then suddenly, it begins to spin. Once, twice, 3 times. Slowly at first, then faster, until the space around it seems pulled into a vortex. The roof tilts, the windows glow with a sickly yellow light. Not the light of a lamp, but the stare of someone watching from inside the dark. But the legs and the spinning are not what frees the soul. What truly breaks the courage of any wanderer is the fence surrounding the hut. A fence not built of wood, not of stone, but of human bones. Thigh bones as posts, arm bones woven as rails. A gate forged from interlocking jaws that clack softly in the wind like teeth grinding in hunger. And atop each post sits a skull, placed with reverence or cruelty, one cannot tell. Each one glowing faintly from within, like lanterns lit with the remnants of forgotten souls. Some legends say the dim light in those hollow eyes is not flame. It is the last fragments of the spirits who failed the trials within Baba Yaga's domain. Not evil souls, not good ones, merely those who could not endure the truths the forest forced upon them. These souls are denied departure and denied oblivion. Instead, they burn quietly, illuminating the path for those who dare follow. An eternal reminder that Baba Yaga never forgives carelessness. To the ancient Slavs, the bone fence symbolized the final boundary, the line dividing the realm of the living from the land where souls no longer belong to flesh. It was also a warning. You now stand where death is not an ending, but a building material. When the hut spins, you will notice something uncanny. It never turns its true face toward you on its own. Its back, or whatever could be called its back, is always aimed at the deeper woods. Because for the hut, the true front is not walls or windows. It is the gateway leading into the thrice 10th kingdom, the 30th realm of Slavic lore, a place no map has ever held, yet survivors describe it as a world turned inside out, a place where time does not flow but twitches, where life does not grow but returns, rising like shadows, crawling backwards into the sky. And to approach the hut, you are forbidden to simply walk forward. You must speak the ancient charm, the language older than writing, older than borders, older than the memory of men. It is said the charm does not command the hut. It announces your presence to the spirit realm, a password proving you are not a disrespectful intruder. Hut, turn your back to the forest and your face to me. When those words are spoken, the air changes color. Not black, not blue, but the cold metallic shimmer of breath sliding across a mirror. The hut halts. The chicken legs fold. The cabin lowers itself to the earth. Its front, formerly turned toward the forest, twists around to face you. The hinges groan, a long ancient moan, as though a sleeping spirit has been roused after a century of silence. Some claim the charm means one thing: I seek the path, and the hut, acting as the gatekeeper, will open the way, if it judges you worthy. In truth, the chicken-legged house is not purely a creature of myth. Archaeologists have found raised houses used by northern tribes to store grain, lifted on tall stilts to keep predators and melting snow at bay. Yet over centuries, the image transformed, becoming a home that does not belong to the earth, a house without roots, detached from soil, thus detached from life. And yet not reaching heaven either, thus not divine, suspended between realms, like Baba Yaga herself, like every soul lingering at the threshold of life and death. The hut always faces the deep forest because that is the direction of the spirit world. The Slavs believed that the farthest depths of the woods held a darkness not caused by the absence of light, but by the presence of another light bleeding through. For the hut, that direction marks the seam between worlds, and the doorway to the 30th realm always lies on the side that mortals are blind to. Only when the charm is spoken does the hut turn. It is the moment you accept leaving your own world to step toward a land where time itself changes shape. When the hut's door opens, what lies inside is never predictable. Sometimes it is a cramped chamber, thick with smoke and the smell of herbs. Sometimes it is vast, far larger than the exterior suggests, stretching outward like the entrance to another reality, where Baba Yaga dwells among forces unnamed. Yet what awaits you inside is never merely a room. It is the gaze of the gatekeeper, the first trial before the witch herself. And all who survive agree, when the hut bows, when it allows you to come closer, you will understand something no book has ever dared to say aloud. The hut is not Baba Yaga's home. The hut is a being, a guardian, a doorway belonging to the world that demands your soul make a final choice. Step forward or turn away. Live on or die in a way no mortal language has ever defined. And beyond that doorway, Baba Yaga is already waiting. When the hut's door cracks open, people often say it doesn't feel like looking into the inside of a house at all, but into a mouth, a black, yawning maw carved out of the forest, waiting for something to step inside. And in that darkness, where even the faint glow from the skulls outside cannot reach, a figure begins to appear. No footsteps, no scrape across the floor, only the movement of space itself, as if the darkness were shifting nearer of its own accord. She emerges not with grandeur, but with a silence so profound it freezes the skin. Baba Yaga, a name once whispered to frighten children into sleeping on time, yet spoken with reverence during ancient rites. People describe her differently depending on who tells the story, but three traits never change. She is taller than any ordinary person, thin enough for bone to seem ready to pierce through skin, and her eyes, those eyes, always glow like embers newly stirred by a gust of wind. No one knows her true age. Some claim she appears as a skeletal crone, with a long nose nearly touching her chin, a tattered headscarf draped over her skull. Others swear she does not look old at all, but carries the eerie, prehistoric beauty of an ancient goddess. Her face more sculpture than flesh, as if carved into existence beside burial mounds long forgotten. But regardless of the form she chooses, everyone agrees on one thing. To look at Baba Yaga is to behold life and death sharing the same vessel. She is not good, but she is not evil. She is a force beyond the morality humans invented to comfort themselves. She stands within the hut holding an object every Slav would recognize, a colossal mortar, the wooden or stone vessel once used for rituals and household work. In Baba Yaga's hands, however, it is not a tool. It is a vehicle. She places one foot inside and one foot outside, as though the world is too small to hold her entirely. Then she guides the long wooden pestle as a sailor would steer an oar. When she rides the mortar across the sky, the pestle does more than guide. It churns the air, carving vortices the wind itself avoids. And then there is the birch broom, the tool she uses to sweep away all traces of her passage. This detail unsettles storytellers the most. She never leaves footprints, wheel marks, or any sign that she has touched the mortal world. They say she erases her tracks because she belongs to a realm where time has no past or future. She merely travels through worlds like a wanderer, passing between layered veils of reality. Mortar, pestle, broom, three ordinary objects carrying the meaning of transformation. What once ground grain to nourish the human body now grinds away the old self, testing whether the traveler has the strength to step into another state of being. Baba Yaga is no common witch. She is the Crone, the oldest archetype of the ancient triple goddess, guardian of death's secrets, and also the keeper of rebirth. The Crone is not the evil old hag. Modern culture reduces her to. In old European mythology, she is the final face of the goddess, the maiden, the mother, and the Crone. The Crone is perfect wisdom, the end of all things, so that beginnings can return. She is winter before spring, night before dawn, darkness required for the return of light. Baba Yaga embodies this completely. She does not destroy to annihilate. She strives to purify. Whoever survives her trials walks onward with a strength they never knew they possessed. For that reason, the ancient Slavs never saw Baba Yaga as a villain. They saw her as the tester. Heroes in their tales do not come to defeat her. They come to endure the trials she sets. She questions, observes, and measures the soul standing before her. She never grants help easily, but to the worthy, she may give the strongest artifact, the farthest guidance, or the fire capable of burning both darkness and deceit. Baba Yaga does not protect the good. She does not punish the wicked. She punishes the weak of spirit, those who refuse to face truth, those who seek shortcuts, those who knock on her door without understanding the price. Such people are devoured by the hut, or worse, become the pale flames inside the sockets of the skulls along the bone fence. And here lies what modern people often misunderstand. Baba Yaga does not dwell in the forest because she was expelled from the human world. She lives there because she is the guardian of the soul's threshold. The land of the dead, in ancient Slavic belief, does not lie deep underground as in other religions. It lies beside the world of the living, separated only by a thin layer of reality, fragile as a spider's web. The forest is where that web is thinnest, and where it is thin, a sentinel is needed. Baba Yaga is that sentinel. She does not simply guard the door. She tests all who wish to pass through. These trials are not games. Each task she gives is a trial of the inner self. Do you know how to listen to your intuition? Do you know what deserves fear and what does not? Do you respect the boundaries between yourself and the secrets not meant for the living? Baba Yaga does not care whether you are strong or weak, clever or foolish. She only cares whether you are honest with yourself in the presence of darkness. Some say that when you look into Baba Yaga's eyes, you see the final moment of your life, not as a curse, but as a reminder that every creature has an ending. Those who accept this walk forward. Those who cower and flee are swallowed by the forest. Baba Yaga does not chase them. She never needs to. The forest does it for her. In the old stories, Baba Yaga appears just before the hero enters an entirely new chapter of their journey, never by accident, never without purpose. She is the gatekeeper in the truest sense. If you cannot pass her, you are unworthy of touching the greater mysteries of the universe. And when she steps aside, allowing the light from within the hut to spill outward, it is not permission. It is an invitation. No traveler is ever certain they want, yet none can refuse. Because beyond Baba Yaga lies another world. A world that, once you enter it, ensures you will never be the same again. When you stand before Baba Yaga, inside the hut where the darkness seems to thicken with every breath, you begin to hear strange sounds from outside. Not the sound of animals, not the whisper of wind. It is the steady trembling of the earth, like the heartbeat of a colossal creature buried beneath the roots. Each pulse grows stronger, clearer, until suddenly, a white streak cuts through the forest's darkness, tearing the silence clean in half. The ancient Slavs used to say, "Before you meet Baba Yaga, you will see the forest, but after you see Baba Yaga, you will see time." And they were not exaggerating, for in the legends, the three mounted riders, white, red, and black, are not human. They are the personifications of three ancient forces: dawn, the sun, and the night. They are gods who were never worshipped, yet appear in human lives every single day. And within the spirit forest, they serve under Baba Yaga. The first rider always arrives the most abruptly, a young man entirely white, riding a horse so pale that light seems to bleed from its very hair. When he passes, the forest brightens with the faint silver of early morning, the kind that does not warm, but pushes the shadows a step backwards. Not dawn in the sky, but dawn as a living being. They say he carries the sorrowful beauty of a day that has not yet decided whether it will bring hope or tragedy. The second is the Red Rider, mounted on a horse, glowing like a burning coal. Not the gentle red of warmth, but the piercing red of a midsummer sun at its cruelest height. When he charges past, the forest trembles. His light is not meant for guidance. It is meant for burning away whatever is too weak to endure it. The Slavs believed he was the essence of the sun itself, fierce, omnipotent, and indifferent to suffering. He judges nothing. He simply shines, and whatever cannot withstand him must wither. But the most terrifying is the third, the Black Rider. No one has ever seen his face, for his darkness is not the absence of light, but the denial of it. He does not arrive. He manifests. As though the night itself she condenses into human shape. His horse makes no sound, yet with each step, the air tightens, as if the entire forest holds its breath. Many claim that when the Black Rider passes, time stops, all sound collapses, and a faint white outline appears around inanimate objects, the mark of the spirit world brushing against the living. None of the three riders speaks. They do not need to. They are not individuals. They are the flow of time made visible, and this current obeys Baba Yaga, not because she owns it, but because she guards the threshold where time meets death. In this forest realm, time is not a straight line. It is a circle endlessly turning, and the three riders are its three eternal points: beginning, zenith, and end. In ancient Eastern European belief, death is never the final goal. It is a segment of the cycle. Dawn, birth, sun, life. Night, death. But night contains the seed of the next dawn. Thus, the three riders are not merely bearers of light and darkness. They are the keepers of balance, ensuring no part of the cycle overstays its place. If one fails, for example, if night refuses to recede, the world would plunge into chaos. Why then does time obey Baba Yaga? Because the boundary between life and death is where time is weakest. And Baba Yaga stands guard at that boundary. Time, no matter how powerful, cannot cross the gate she watches. For there, everything is equal. The strong and the weak, kings and peasants, the living and spirits, all must stop before her. And so, the three riders, the embodiments of time, are bound to follow the rules of the gatekeeper. In many old tales, the riders appear just before Baba Yaga presents a great trial, or when the hero is about to make a life-altering choice. Dawn reveals the path ahead. The sun tests your endurance. The night decides whether you may continue or be devoured. But for the Slavs, the riders themselves were not the most important part. What mattered was how they humanized nature. In that worldview, humans did not stand apart from nature. They lived with it, breathed with it, feared and worshipped it. When dawn came, they imagined the white rider galloping across the heavens. When the sun reached its peak, they saw the Red Rider drawing his flaming bow. And when night fell, they felt the Black Rider place his hand upon the forest, signaling spirits to open their eyes. To personify nature was to acknowledge that everything has a soul: rivers, mountains, the sun, even death, and that these souls were far greater than humans, demanding humility before a power unseen yet undeniable. Those who survived encounters with Baba Yaga often say the riders were not as frightening as expected. They did not threaten, they did not harm, they simply passed. But it is precisely the way they pass, steady, emotionless, unchanging, that forces one to realize how small they are within the universe's vast machinery. Not everyone understands. Some see the White Rider and think it a blessing. Others glimpse the Black Rider and fear a curse. But to Baba Yaga, they are the same. They are the pulse of the world, and only those who can hear that pulse may overcome her trials. And once the riders vanish, the forest sinks into silence again. But this time, the silence is no longer a warning. It is what remains after a test, for only after witnessing time in its true form can a person understand that the next challenge will not come from the forest, nor the hut, nor the shadows, but from Baba Yaga herself, who now waits for your answer to the question she never needs to speak aloud. Are you prepared to enter the place where time holds no power? If someone wished to understand the true nature of Baba Yaga, the ancient Slavs would not begin with the hut on chicken legs, nor with the horseman who embodied time. They would begin with a girl, a small girl, seemingly too fragile to survive a forest not meant for human beings. A girl named Vasilisa. For great myths rarely begin with thunder. They begin with a soft breath of fate, and Vasilisa was that breath. Her story did not begin in the forest, nor in darkness, but in a lamplit home where a dying mother gave her daughter a final gift: a small wooden doll, worn smooth, its eyes drawn in fading charcoal. To outsiders, it was just a toy. But to the mother, it was a treasure, the embodiment of feminine intuition, the quiet wisdom passed down through generations. She told the girl, "Feed it whenever you are in despair. It will help you." They were the words of someone who knew that once she passed, her daughter would confront a far greater darkness than any child should bear. When the mother died, that darkness arrived. Not from the forest, but within the home itself. A cruel stepmother and her two daughters, determined to crush whatever small light Vasilisa carried. They worked her relentlessly, suffocated her joy, drained her warmth, but each night, while the others slept, she took the doll out, set a crumb of bread before it, and whispered her troubles. And the doll opened its eyes. Not in a literal sense, but in the way only those who have brushed the spirit world understand. It awakened within her consciousness. It worked in her stead. It cleaned. It tended the fire. It fetched water. But the strangest part was how Vasilisa felt. Every time she looked at the doll, she did not see an object. She saw a path, a guide, an intuition so strong it pushed back despair. As if the doll were her mother's voice, echoing from a place even the forest could not reach. Then came the fateful day. The family moved to the border of Baba Yaga's forest, a choice made by the stepmother for one purpose: to rid herself of Vasilisa. One night, she extinguished every flame in the house and ordered Vasilisa to fetch fire from the nearest neighbor, the hut on chicken legs. Everyone knew this was a disguised death sentence. But Vasilisa had no choice. She took the doll and stepped into the forest, where darkness was not the absence of light, but the presence of a vast, watching spirit. She walked through the forest as though through a torn dream. Every sound was too sharp. Every heartbeat echoed like footsteps of something following her. The wind through the branches formed syllables, sometimes like her mother's voice, sometimes like the stepmother's mocking laughter. Moonlight carved the branches into clawing hands, trying to hold her back. And when fear crested unbearably, the doll in her pocket warmed, as if grasping her hand, guiding her forward. No one knows where that power came from. only that in Baba Yaga's forest, intuition is the one thing that never betrays you. Then she saw them, the three horsemen everyone must face upon entering this realm. The white rider, dawn; the red rider, the sun; the black rider, the night. Each passed her like a slice through the stages of a human life. And when the black rider vanished into the trees, night fell as though a great shroud had been lowered. Only the fiery glow of skulls on the bone fence remained, and within that unearthly light stood the hut, spinning so fast the entire forest seemed pulled into its rotation. Vasilisa froze, not from terror, but from a strange sensation, as though the forest itself held her still, asking a silent question. "Are you certain this is your path?" Then she remembered the charm. Her voice shook, but she spoke. "Hut, turn your back to the forest, and your face to me." The spinning slowed. The chicken legs bent, then lowered to the ground. The door pivoted toward her like an opening eye. A heavy silence stretched before the door swung open. Inside, Baba Yaga was waiting. Baba Yaga did not greet her. Strangers are not greeted. They are evaluated. The witch's gaze swept over Vasilisa like a beam of light cutting through fog, not to see her body, but to see the architecture of her soul. Then she smiled, a smile that revealed metal teeth sharp as knives. "I know your stepmother," she said. "You will have fire, if you live long enough to take it." And thus the trials began. On the first day, Baba Yaga assigned her the impossible. Clean the hut, which was far larger inside than outside, prepare a meal for a being who did not eat like the living, and most daunting of all, separate grains of wheat from dirt and poppy seeds, a task no human hands could do. But Vasilisa did the one thing she knew was right. She fed the doll and slept. And in her sleep, the doll completed everything. The old Slavs said the doll did not work alone. It summoned invisible forces, sometimes insects, sometimes small forest spirits, beings who enjoyed helping those with pure hearts. The trials continued. Day 2, Day 3. Each challenge tested not her strength, but her soul. Humility, proper fear, silence in the presence of secrets. Baba Yaga asked about the three riders. Vasilisa answered. But when Baba Yaga asked about the unseen hands in the hut, objects moving by themselves, the girl bowed her head and said, "Because you told me it is not good to know too much." That answer pleased Baba Yaga, not because Vasilisa feared her, but because she respected boundaries, the first requirement for surviving this realm. When the last trial ended, Baba Yaga gave her a blazing skull. Not a normal flame. A fire that sees truth. The old tales never say it outright, but they agree. This fire does not burn the innocent. It burns those whose hearts carry darkness. Vasilisa carried the fire home. And indeed, it did not harm her. It devoured the stepmother and her two cruel daughters, burning them to ash. Not because Vasilisa sought revenge, but because their truth was exposed under that flame. To the Slavs, this was not murder, but the restoration of balance. From that moment on, Vasilisa was no longer an abused child, no longer a frightened girl lost in the forest. She became a knower, one who has survived Baba Yaga's trials and understood the boundary between this world and the next. Baba Yaga does not grant power. She grants a person back to themselves, in a stronger form. Vasilisa's story did not end in the forest. It spread outward, like sparks falling from skull lanterns onto damp earth, lighting a path retold for generations, for she proved something the Slavs believed deeply. The forest does not consume those who enter with an honest heart. It only consumes souls that have abandoned their own light. When Vasilisa carried the burning skull back to the darkened house at the forest's edge, she did not know she was holding not merely a flame, but the very essence of death in Slavic myth. That night, the wind behaved strangely, not howling, not whistling, but holding its breath as if watching. No bird dared to sing, no leaf dared to sway. The stillness pressed against her shoulders like water, heavy and enclosing. The skull glowed with a fire unlike any human flame. It did not flicker red or gold. nor cast warm, trembling shadows across the walls. Its light was so white it seemed cold, so blue it ached behind the eyes, so deep it felt as though it emanated from a space beyond mortal comprehension. This was the fire of judgment, the ancient flame that divides truth from falsehood, virtue from corruption, light from the inner darkness of human hearts. The Slavs believed that fire was the embodiment of truth, a truth that needed no witness and spoke no words, a fire that could be seen. And that night, the light from the skull's hollow eyes stared directly into the stepmother's house like an ancient beast catching the scent of rot. Vasilisa crossed the threshold. She did not call out or explain. And strangely, the stepmother and her daughters did not rush to scold her or snatch the skull away. They stood frozen, their eyes wide with hunger and fear, as though the flame had exposed something they had spent years burying. Then the fire began to change. A column of light shot upward from the empty sockets, illuminating the three women's faces. There was no crackle of burning, no screams. It was the silence that made it horrifying, the sense that the fire was not consuming their flesh, but something deeper, the lies, the envy, the cruelty, long festering within them. In ancient Slavic belief, death was not always an ending. It was the final cleansing. Fire, in their funerary rites, was used not to harm the body, but to return a person to their truest form. Ash was simply what remained once all falsehood had been burned away. And on that fateful night, Vasilisa's stepfamily was returned to their truest form. Tiny heaps of ash, dark as the poppy seeds she once had to separate grain by grain. Not because she wished them dead, not because she hated them. She even stepped back when the light erupted, her hands trembling from horror, not triumph. But Baba Yaga's fire does not measure the heart of the one who carries it. It measures the hearts of those who stand before it. The flame is indifferent and absolute, the scales of death made visible. When it was over, when the ashes cooled and the smell of burning lingered in the dirt, Vasilisa stood quietly. No one remained in the house but her and the skull that had fulfilled its judgment. The light in its eyes dimmed slowly, then vanished entirely, like the final candle snuffed out. Darkness returned, but it was not the old oppressive darkness. It was an honest one, a darkness emptied of deceit. She carried the skull outside, dug a small hole in the garden, and buried it. Not out of fear, but respect. The Slavs believed that anything bearing a soul must be given back to the earth once its task is complete. The earth keeps the memory of all things. The forest keeps its spirits. As she covered the skull with soil, the doll in her pocket stirred gently, as if offering its approval. From that moment on, Vasilisa's path shifted. She was no longer a girl pushed about by fate. She had survived the forest's trial, faced death without being devoured, and held the fire of judgment without being condemned. In the ancient Slavic rite of passage, there were 3 stages: departure, ordeal, and return. That night, in a way brutal but fair, she completed the final stage. And what made her story remarkable was not magic nor salvation, but a simple truth. In Slavic myth, death comes only to those who have no path left back to their better selves. The light from the skull never kills the innocent. It only illuminates the places people try hardest to hide. This is why Baba Yaga is seen as a just entity, despite her terror. She does not create sin. She merely reveals it. After burying the skull, Vasilisa rose to her feet. Dawn was near. A thin mist slithered across the ground like the retreating veil of the spirit world. And at the forest's edge, among the silent trees, she sensed something watching, not with malice, but with acknowledgement, as though the forest knew what had happened and marked her in its own way. As a survivor, one who had passed through fire without losing herself to it. From that moment, the world no longer felt dull. Life and death, light and shadow, right and wrong, all became sharper, yet more mysterious. Vasilisa understood she had stepped into a realm of knowledge few were allowed to touch. Not the knowledge of books, but of those who have looked directly at the boundary between worlds and returned unharmed. Her story does not end here, but that night, when she closed the door of her house, for the first time in years, the darkness inside no longer frightened her, because she knew darkness is dangerous only when you still hide something within yourself. And no one understands this better than those who have carried Baba Yaga's flame in their hands. After the night when the judging fire consumed Vasilisa's cruel household, the forest returned to its habitual silence. But it was not an empty silence. It was the silence of something ancient in contemplation. For whenever death appears exactly where it belongs, beings older than humankind shift subtly in the shadows, as though checking whether the original order of the world still holds its shape. In the deepest strata of Slavic mythology, Baba Yaga was never merely an old woman flying in a mortar with a birch broom. That was only the final mask placed upon her by later generations. Long before Christianization, long before writing spread across these lands, long before the earliest tribes pitched their tents at the forest's edge, Baba Yaga had been a goddess. Not a goddess of harvest, not a goddess of love, but a dark goddess, keeper of winter, death, and the ending of cycles. A being so primordial that even other deities regarded her with caution, for she did not govern life. She governed the inevitability that follows life. Fragmented ancient accounts all point to the same archetype. In the Slavic world, she was Marana, the goddess of winter, decay, and cold death, with a face pale as first snow and a breath sharp enough to crack branches. Marana was the reminder that every light must endure a long night before returning. She embodied harshness, but also necessity, for without winter, nothing could be reborn. Farther south, the Slavs also revered Koschei, the mother goddess of earth, spinner of fate, guardian of women's souls. Though gentler, she too possessed duality. She was birth and nourishment, yet also the dark threads of destiny from which even heroes could not escape. She did not freeze the world like Marana, but she commanded mysteries just as deep. Travel westward into Celtic lands, and one finds Cailleach, the ancient hag goddess of storms and winter, who shaped mountains with her steps and turned the wheel of the year with her icy staff. She was destruction and renewal in equal measure, an embodiment of the cosmic reset. In the Alps, she appears as Perchta, her face split in two, one half beautiful as moonlight, the other shriveled like a corpse in winter. She inspected children, punished the lazy, and guided wandering souls. Villagers said Perchta could see truths others hid from themselves. These figures are not coincidentally similar. They are expressions of the same primordial archetype. The old goddess at the threshold of life and death, the keeper of winter and twilight, the guardian between endings and beginnings. And Baba Yaga is the Slavic continuation of that archetype, distorted by centuries, but never erased. But what turns a goddess into a witch? What transforms a revered deity into a creature used to frighten children? The answer lies in history's shifting tides. When Christianity entered Slavic lands, its aim was not to destroy the old culture outright, but to transform it. The old gods, especially the goddesses, were considered too independent, too powerful, too uncontrolled. They did not align with a new religious system under a single ultimate authority. Goddesses of winter, death, and soul secrets, beings that humans both feared and revered, became dangerous symbols, and so their images were pushed into shadow. Marana, Perchta, Cailleach, goddesses turned into hags. Koschei was fragmented into gentler saints. And Baba Yaga, once the gatekeeper of souls, was reduced to a child-eating crone. But the people never forgot. Their collective memory kept fragments alive, weaving them into folk tales, transforming Baba Yaga into a figure at once as terrifying as death and as fair as nature itself. Curiously, while other gods faded from worship, Baba Yaga endured, not through temples or prayers, but through stories, campfires, dreams, and nightmares. She became the living memory of the old faith, the hidden root no new religion could extract. In many ancient tales, Baba Yaga is not the villain. She is the trial, the one who asks questions only an honest soul can answer, the one who forces humans to face the darkness inside themselves. The tasks she gave Vasilisa were remnants of initiation rituals. The child must walk into darkness, confront death, and, if they survive, return as someone changed, someone whole. For this reason, modern scholars argue that Baba Yaga is not a witch, not a monster, but an exiled goddess, pushed from her altar, but never from the human mind. A deity the new order could not destroy, only distort. Even the chicken-legged hut, the threshold between life and death, was not born from wild imagination. It echoes ancient, elevated burial houses of Fifin-Ugric peoples, where bodies were placed on wooden stilts to protect them from beasts. The original meaning was sacred, a place where the soul transforms, preparing for the next world. As cultures shifted, the image twisted, then settled upon Baba Yaga, but its holy nature lingered beneath the grotesque shape. And because Baba Yaga is bound so deeply to the past, she became something humans could not erase, wrapped in rags and iron teeth. She remains the last surviving memory of the old goddesses, living in the part of the forest that does not belong to humankind. Those who listen closely to the stories will notice something strange. Baba Yaga does not carry the hostility of monsters. She carries the exhaustion of something that has lived too long, a wisdom so ancient it needs no worship, a power so absolute it requires no allegiance. She exists not to be loved or hated, but because the world needs a guardian for the final boundary. And when asked why Baba Yaga has not vanished like the other goddesses, the old Slavs answered with a single phrase: because winter never disappears. In the deepest layers of Slavic mythology, where tree roots intertwine with human bones and time moves according to laws unknown to the living, there are two names storytellers always whisper rather than speak aloud: Baba Yaga, the keeper of the doorway to the other world, and Koschei the Deathless, the one who refused to cross that doorway. If Baba Yaga is natural winter, a cycle that must arrive and must depart, then Koschei is something misaligned, a fracture in the design of creation, a being deathless not by blessing, but by evasion. He hid his death inside nested shells, a needle in an egg, the egg in a duck, the duck in a hare, the hare inside an iron chest, the chest buried beneath a tree on an island at the edge of the world. He imprisoned his own death, keeping it far from the withered black frame of his body. For this reason, the Slavs never called him immortal with reverence. They called him the man who could not die properly. Koschei ruled no kingdom. He led no armies. Yet he sowed something far more frightening than war: the imprisonment of souls. He kidnapped maidens. He shut them inside castles colder than the darkest winter. He drained their vitality like an addict feeding on the brightness of the world. Slavic tradition holds that Koschei survives only by stealing the living essence of others. And strangely, amid these grim tales, another figure always appears beside him: Baba Yaga, not as an ally, not as a direct adversary, but as the opposite pole of an ancient law no one can fully articulate. The most famous legend binding them appears in the tale of Maria Morevna, the unparalleled warrior maiden whom even death hesitated to touch. She is captured by Koschei after her husband, Ivan Tsarevich, unknowingly breaks the seal that imprisoned him. To rescue her, Ivan must obtain a horse swifter than the wind, for Koschei's steed can gallop through the night without leaving a trace. Only one being in the world possesses such horses: Baba Yaga. Ivan enters the forest, facing trials similar to Vasilisa's, not because fate repeats itself, but because any soul seeking Baba Yaga must prove itself worthy of approaching her realm of knowledge. For her knowledge does not belong to the living. At last, Ivan reaches the chicken-legged hut and begs for a horse. Baba Yaga studies him, her eyes narrowing like moonlight judging the mortal brave enough to challenge a being beyond human limits. She asks no reason, she sets a test. Guard my herd. If even one is missing, I will eat you. What fascinates scholars is this. Ivan fails repeatedly. Baba Yaga's horses are not animals but restless currents of spirit. They slip into the woods, dissolve into darkness, or simply transform into something else. Yet each time Ivan fails, nature itself aids him. Forest birds, ants, even mist, as though the universe desires his success. Not for love, not for heroism, but because the balance has been disturbed. A being who steals life from others, who locks away his own death beneath impossible layers. Koschei has frozen the world in a warped pattern. Baba Yaga knows this. She knows that if Ivan had not come, someone else would have. For immortality is not a gift. It is decay that refuses to complete its course. And like any locked door, eventually someone must knock. When Ivan finally guards the herd until dawn, Baba Yaga does not give him her strongest horse. She gives him the fastest, fast enough to cross the borderline between life and death in a single heartbeat. As she hands him the reins, Baba Yaga says only, "You will need this, for the one you face is not among the living. He is death, trapped in its own body." Those words still puzzle scholars today, for in the Slavic world, all beings have an end. Only two forces stand outside the rule. Baba Yaga, natural death; the necessary winter, the cycle that allows renewal. Koschei the Deathless, death denied, delayed, locked away, producing a grotesque imitation of life. These two forces form a mirrored boundary. One is the death that must come. One is the life that refuses to let death come. This is why Baba Yaga knows how to undo Koschei's immortality. Not out of malice, but because the world requires death to return to the body robbed of it. Without this return, the world would deform into Koschei's image, life existing without change, without purpose, without rebirth. Folklorists call their relationship archetypal, an eternal tension between two complementary forces. Baba Yaga is true entropy, the necessary dissolution that makes room for the next cycle. Koschei is entropy frozen into stagnation, creating imprisonment instead of transformation. Some tales suggest Baba Yaga could destroy Koschei at any time with a mere gesture. But she does not, for she does not embody punishment. She embodies the cycle. Only when humans reclaim their role in the world's balance, like Ivan, does she provide the key. And that key is never a spell. It is knowledge, how to locate Koschei's hidden death, how to unlock the shells, the chest, the island, to allow death to return to its rightful vessel. This is why Baba Yaga always appears near Koschei's stories, though never on his side. In the forest where time coils like serpents rather than flowing straight, these two beings form the ends of destiny's thread. Neither wins, neither loses. They maintain the world by keeping each other in check. Modern scholars now recognize what the ancients already knew. If Baba Yaga vanished, death would lose its way home. If Koschei vanished, life would never learn its limits. No one wants the two forces to merge, but no one wants either to disappear. The tale ends not with Ivan's triumphant victory, nor Koschei's dramatic defeat, but with a colder truth. Immortality is never what humans imagine it to be. And in the deep forest, where Baba Yaga hears the footsteps of time itself, she knows another soul will someday try to reach for that secret again. But the secret of immortality is not radiant light. It is a heavy, unending darkness, and only those unafraid to look into that darkness ever understand. Sometimes the most terrifying thing is not death. It is the inability to die. When people speak of Baba Yaga, they often mention Vasilisa or Koschei, for those are the great stories, steeped in destiny. But in the Slavic villages, nestled deep within seas of forest and fog, the people tell different tales, not long, not epic, but sharper, more primal. Like shards of bone fallen from the skeleton of mythology, still cold, still carrying the scent of the old world. These are the small legends, passed from the mouths of the living to the ears of the unborn, each revealing another hidden corner of the woman who lives between two realms. They say that once, long ago, two orphaned brothers wandered through the forest during the coldest part of the year. The night stretched so long it seemed the sky would never lighten again. The earth had hardened to stone, and the wind howled like souls who had lost their way home. The boys were so hungry they chewed tree bark. Yet hunger was not the worst of it. Worse was the feeling of being watched, shadows slipping between the trees, too long to belong to beasts, too silent to belong to men. One night, under a moon red as frozen blood, they saw a flickering light, a hut standing on giant chicken legs. The older brother thought it was salvation. The younger boy began to cry with the certainty that it was not. But the crying came too late. Baba Yaga opened the door. She did not smile. She only looked, and her look alone could peel a soul from its body if the one facing her was weak. The older brother stepped forward and begged for food. Baba Yaga nodded, a small gesture, sharp as a blade. She took him inside, lit the fire, and said, "In the morning, I will send you both back to the village." The younger boy waited outside, shivering. He felt something was wrong. And he was right. That night, when the wind slipped across the roof, he heard the distinct crunch of bones snapping like dry twigs. At dawn, Baba Yaga came to the door and said the boy's brother had died of exhaustion. But the younger child saw the smear of blood on the stone, and he ran. He ran until his feet bled, until the rising sun looked like a burning cloth held before his eyes. Baba Yaga did not chase him. She didn't need to, for the forest feeds on the frail little lights that wander too close. And from that day forward, villagers said, on the deepest winter nights, if you hear a knock asking for fire, do not open the door. Sometimes Baba Yaga is not hunting. She is reminding mankind that the hunger of the forest has never slept. The second tale is lighter, yet terrifying in another way. They say Baba Yaga once had a test for children, a way to see whether a child possessed the manners and courage needed to grow into the world. She met them when they wandered alone, frightened and lost among the trees. She gave them a red kerchief and said, "Bring this home. Do not drop it, and do not open it." Children are curious by nature, but any child who opened the kerchief before reaching their doorstep vanished from the human world. No one knows where they went. Only whispers say the cloth held the secret of souls not yet grown. Those who returned with the kerchief untouched lived all their lives. The elders explained, this was not punishment, it was a right. In Baba Yaga's world, manners are not social rules. They are the threads that keep a soul from being swallowed by the forest. Another story tells of Ivan the Fool, the boy everyone believed too simple to survive. One day, he wandered into the woods and found Baba Yaga preparing to turn an unfortunate traveler to ash. Ivan did not flee. He simply asked, "Why are you doing that?" A foolish question. So foolish, Baba Yaga laughed. And strangely, she did not devour him. She fed him, let him sleep in her hut, and at dawn gave him a gift, a cold black coal. "When you meet true darkness," she said, "you will know how to glow." No one knows why Baba Yaga helped him. Some say she honored pure souls, those not clever enough to be cruel, not foolish enough to be useless, those who simply remain themselves. Ivan returned to the village and lived happily to old age. The coal never burned, or at least no one ever saw it burn. But Ivan kept it with him always, as though it reminded him that even in the strangest world, honesty is its own flame. And lastly, there is the tale of the three sisters, three Baba Yagas, known only to those born on Slavic soil. Storytellers whisper that three Baba Yagas dwelled at the three farthest points of the deep forest. Each kept a fragment of the world's secret. One guarded the knowledge of life, one the knowledge of death, and one the knowledge of fate. Those who sought truth had to meet all three in sequence, but each meeting aged them, a trade paid in years of life, for truth is never free. Strangely, all three Baba Yagas had the same face, the same voice, the same eyes like wet embers. Only upon meeting the third would the seeker realize they were not three separate beings at all. They were one entity, three phases of an ancient goddess whose true name had long been lost. To meet all three was to meet Baba Yaga in her entirety. But no one ever returned to tell the tale in full. Only whispers remain, that when you look into the eyes of the third Baba Yaga, you no longer see the forest. You see your destiny, written before you were born. 4 stories, 4 fragments of one truth. Baba Yaga is not a single person. She is the collective shape of fear, trial, and revelation passed from Slavic soul to Slavic soul across centuries. She does not try to frighten people. She does not try to save them. She simply reflects them. Like the fire in the skull's empty eyes reflected the truth in Vasilisa's stepmother. And the most terrifying thing in all these tales is not that Baba Yaga can eat, kidnap, or test the weak. The most terrifying thing is this: every story is true, but none of them tells the whole truth. There are legends about Baba Yaga that people recount with trembling voices, tales of the chicken-legged hut, of skulls that can see, of horsemen shaped from the bones of time. But deeper than any of these lies, a secret only the old sorcerers and shamans of the Slavic lands dared whisper beside the fire. Baba Yaga is the keeper of the 2 most sacred waters in the world, water of life and water of death, a power so essential that even the younger, brighter gods had to step aside for it. In Slavic tradition, water is not merely a substance. It is the memory of the world. Forests remember footsteps. Earth remembers bones, but water remembers the soul. The ancients believed that every soul that ever existed left traces within water: laughter, grief, unspoken longing, fear swallowed into the depths. Thus, water is never truly still. It merely wears stillness on its surface to hide the movements beneath. Within the deepest layer of these legends, 2 waters flow in opposite directions of fate. The first person to take a sample from Baba Yaga was no hero, but an old sorcerer who lived alone in a swamp. He paid for the privilege with an eye so that he could see the memories of water. And in that sight, he discovered something unimaginable. Baba Yaga did not create these holy waters. She simply tended them, like a warden tending the gate through which all souls must pass, whether they wish to or not. The water of life is clear beyond reflection, so pure it cannot mirror a face, so light it carries no taste, no scent. Dropped onto soil, it makes grass rise in a single breath. Laid upon a corpse, it summons the soul back. But such resurrection is not the shining miracle of Western fairy tales. Those who return never return unchanged. They bear an invisible scar, the faint signature of death still pressed into their bones. Not everyone is permitted to touch it. Baba Yaga keeps this water not out of selfishness, but because she knows. To recall a soul that has walked into the dark is to interrupt the rhythm of the world. Only under extraordinary circumstances, when destiny itself demands it, will she let the water of life leave her hand. The water of death is different. It is black as a starless night, thick as frozen shadow. Touch it, and a cold so absolute steals sensation from the flesh. Drink a single drop, and the soul slips from the body like smoke. Yet, this water is not meant for killing. It is meant for release. The Slavic untethering of the soul, especially for those who died wrong, or violently, or while still bound to the world by curses and unfinished grief. Baba Yaga keeps it not to spreading death, but because she understands that death is merely a door opening toward another shore. Souls trapped between worlds need someone to cut the thread holding them back. No god of light ever volunteers for such work. Why then do these waters belong to Baba Yaga and not to Marana, Velas, or Mokosh? Modern scholars explain that Baba Yaga is not a goddess of a single domain, as later religions would categorize divine beings. She is the embodiment of the threshold, the line between day and night, between life and death, between the path known and the path no one dares walk. Water flows across every threshold. It carries the messages of souls, the memory of earth, the medium through which life and death exchange hands. Whoever governs the threshold governs water. The Slavs crafted countless rites involving water. At a child's birth, they washed the newborn in spring water, the soul's introduction to the world. At death, they rinsed the deceased's hands with water drawn from the village edge to separate the soul from the flesh. At weddings, couples shared a bowl of sacred water, two soul streams agreeing to flow as one. And in every ritual, the people whispered a name never spoken too loudly. The lady of the forest will listen. No one dared speak Baba Yaga fully during the water rites. To do so felt like opening a door no living person should stand before. One legend tells of a young prince who sought Baba Yaga for the water of life to revive his dead beloved. He brought gold, jewels, and promises of temples built in her honor. Baba Yaga refused everything. She said, "Water does not obey prayer. It obeys fate." The prince rejected this. He stole the water of life and fled into the woods. But when the drop touched his beloved's lips, she opened her eyes, and they no longer held love. They held the cold distance of someone pulled back from a realm she was not meant to leave. She rose, but her soul could not find its way into her resurrected body. She became a shadow, and then she disappeared. The prince screamed in despair, but Baba Yaga closed her hut door without a word. She had known the ending from the beginning. For the one thing she cannot alter is the truth. Another legend tells of an old warrior who sought Baba Yaga for the water of death, not to die, but to free the soul of his wife, who had died in rage and haunted their home for years. Baba Yaga watched him for a long time, then handed him a single drop. "Release is the soul's choice," she said, "not the living's." When the warrior placed the drop upon the hearth, his wife's spirit appeared. She was no longer angry, no longer aching. She simply asked, "Is it time?" Then she dissolved into a thin gray mist, and the home was more peaceful than it had ever been. Modern people often ask, is Baba Yaga good or evil? But the stories of the waters answer a different truth. She does not care about good or evil. She cares about the flow of the world. Those who move against the current, she corrects. Those who move with it, she leaves untouched. Those who try to bend fate, she shows a mirror into the darkness they wish to avoid. In Baba Yaga's hands, water is not magic. It is the truth in liquid form. And whoever receives truth can never remain who they were. Perhaps that is why the new churches, the new gods, and the new rituals laid across the Slavic lands could never erase her. People may forget how to pray, forget how to light the old candles, but no one forgets how to stare into dark water at night and wonder who is looking back from below, in that depth where the sky cannot reflect. One might see Baba Yaga, or perhaps they see only themselves, the version of the soul water preserves after it has crossed the threshold once and will cross again. There is a truth few dare to speak aloud. Baba Yaga does not merely guard the exit from life, she guards the entrance as well. People often imagine her waiting at the end of a long journey, a shadow at the final threshold. But the oldest Slavic traditions, the ones preserved only in the charms of shamans and the lullabies of ancient mothers, describe Baba Yaga as the midwife of souls before they are born, a sentinel who watches the threshold between never been and about to become. In the oldest Slavic myths, unborn children gather in another forest, the forest of souls not yet embodied. There, inside the chicken-legged hut, turning slowly like a wheel of fate, Baba Yaga sits beside a cauldron filled with a liquid no one has ever named. They call it the water of beginning, a younger sibling to the waters of life and death she keeps in the mortal world. It is said that before a soul enters life, it must choose its path. Strength or fragility, joy or sorrow, wisdom or innocence, poverty or prosperity. But this choice is not like the choices of grown humans. Souls cannot speak, cannot fear, cannot desire, so when they place their hand into the cauldron, they choose through instinct, an instinct so pure that the Slavs believed every soul is born already knowing what it once was. This is why the old people said, "Many young children speak words that chill adults to the bone. I have been here before. I lived in a blue house. I remember a dead horse. I remember falling from high above." These are not fantasies. They are fragments carried from that final encounter with Baba Yaga, when the river of fate had not yet hardened into a single direction. One ancient lullaby whispers, "If you cry at your first breath, it means you have not forgotten the forest where the old woman touched your brow." Mothers sang this not to frighten their babies, but to acknowledge that the infant soul had not fully severed its ties to the world before. That cry, that invisible fear, was the trace of something Baba Yaga had whispered into the child's ear. A reminder of the path the soul itself had chosen before it came into light. Scholars today call this figure the archetype of the Crone, the wise old woman who stands at the crossroads of death and birth. But in folklore, the image is not abstract philosophy. It is visceral. Baba Yaga is the midwife of souls, the one who bathes them in the murky water, the one who presses the first imprint of fate into each forehead. A role both sacred and terrifying. Not every soul steps into life immediately. Some hesitate, fearful of the darkness of the womb, fearful of the brightness of the world. Legends say Baba Yaga lifts these trembling souls into her mortar, stirs them with her pestle until they stand upright without shaking. The people called it the hardening of the soul, cruel perhaps, but the Slavs believed a weak soul would be shattered by the world. Baba Yaga did what no radiant god dared to do. She prepared souls to survive reality. Another tale claims some souls approach Baba Yaga and refuse to be born at all. They say they are tired, bored, and unwilling to continue the cycle. When that happens, Baba Yaga is silent. She leads the soul to the fence of bones, the map of those lost across innumerable lives, and asks, "Do you wish to stay here forever?" Most tremble. One glance into the hollow eyes of the skulls teaches them that refusing birth means refusing the right to die again. Death, to the Slavs, was no ending. It was the door back to Baba Yaga. A soul that does not live will never be allowed to die. And that is the deepest tragedy of all. The old people feared Baba Yaga. They feared the truth she carried, feared her gaze that pierced flesh and spirit alike, feared the quiet tap of her pestle against the mortar, the signal that another soul was being shaped. But they also revered her because no one else was strong enough to keep order between the two worlds. Revered her because, without her, young souls would wander without guidance. Revered her because she alone did not lie, did not decorate reality, did not hide the truth that every life is an experiment the soul itself chose. Some Slavic villages had the custom of bringing bread and a little milk to the forest edge on fog-heavy mornings after a child was born. They called it the offering to the guide. No one knew whether Baba Yaga accepted it, but they believed that without the offering, the child would not sleep peacefully, for its soul would still hear the footsteps of the chicken-legged hut circling the house, checking whether the newborn kept the promise it made before entering the world. To modern religion, the idea of a witch acting as midwife of souls sounds contradictory, but in the architecture of ancient myth, it fits perfectly, for it is not the gods of light who understand the essence of life most deeply. It is the beings who have lived long in darkness, the crones weathered down to pure wisdom by time, who understand what a soul needs so it does not shatter upon meeting reality. And perhaps this is why the old ones feared and worshipped Baba Yaga in equal measure. She grants no blessing, gives no punishment, issues no commands. She only hands the soul exactly what it chose. Death is her truth, but birth, trembling and luminous, is her work as well. She holds both ends of the thread, while humanity sees only half the circle and judges from fear. At the end of these stories, the storyteller often looks toward the doorway, as though something were listening from the shadows. They say that when a child stares into empty air and smiles, it remembers something from that forest of souls, remembers the hoarse, patient voice of Baba Yaga. A memory never whole, but enough to remind the soul it did not enter this world alone, and enough to remind us that, for all the tales about what Baba Yaga does to the dead, the most frightening thing is what she whispers to those who have not yet lived. If Baba Yaga's chicken-legged hut is the doorway into the borderlands between worlds, then the bone fence surrounding it is the map of souls that failed. It is not a gruesome decoration, nor the trace of slaughter, as later tales would claim. To the ancient Slavs, that fence was the frontier of life and death, the final resting point of those who never understood why the darkness swallowed them. The bones are not placed at random. Each carries a story. The long, pale forearm bones, so white they seem to glow, belong to those who relied on strength alone when challenging the forest. They stepped into the darkness, believing muscle could overcome witchcraft, and the forest, owing them nothing, quietly reclaimed everything. The small, bird-like ribs belonged to those who fled at the first test. They did not die because Baba Yaga was angry. They died because their own collapse tore their souls from their bodies in a nameless terror. There are skulls as small as a clenched fist, objects that make many turn away. Not children, despite later Christian distortions. The ancient Slavs never believed Baba Yaga ate infants. These tiny skulls belong to incomplete souls, ones born at the wrong moment, in the wrong place, or not strong enough to endure entering life. They tried to return to the gate of existence, but the gate had closed, and the bone fence became the place where their lostness was made eternal. In Slavic belief, bone was not dead matter. Bone held the imprint of life that passed through it. It carried memory, not the memory humans understand, but the last awareness, the final sensation of the soul before the darkness consumed it. Thus, the bone fence was like an enormous book written in the remnants of existence. Those who knew how to read it, those who could hear the language of bone, understood why a soul had failed, not pleas for mercy, not regret, but the moment they realized that the trial was never meant to destroy them, it was meant to reveal them. Every type of bone carried meaning. Vertebrae represented will. Crooked, broken spines testified to souls who lacked the strength to walk the whole path. Femurs represented action. The bones of hesitators, those who stepped forward but never took the final stride, hung on the fence as reminders that the road does not open for those who linger between directions. The sternum represented courage. The Slavs believed the soul entered the world through the chest, so when a sternum rested within the fence, it meant fear had pierced the heart before any blade ever touched the flesh. The skulls were the most important. They were the lanterns of death. Baba Yaga lit each skull so light poured through its empty eye sockets. This was not an ordinary fire. It was called the mount of recognition, a flame that burned only in the bones of souls who had wandered too far from their path. The living felt cold when they looked at that light. Souls felt heat so intense it dissolved. Illusion. The flame did not burn flesh, it burned self-deception. From a mythological view, the bone fence did not simply protect Baba Yaga. It protected the world outside from the liminal realm she governed. Not everyone who entered deserved death. Not everyone who failed was stripped of their soul. The fence held only incomplete souls, those who refused to face their true darkness. Such souls could not return to life, nor pass fully into death. They were the in-between, beings who had lost all direction. One legend says that in the harshest winters, when the wind shrieks like grieving spirits, the bone fence whispers. It is then that the trapped souls try to speak their names back to each other, trying to remember. No one has ever heard a full story, but shamans claimed that if one sat long enough at the forest's edge, one might hear a name repeated like a plea, but no one ever dared say it aloud. Speaking the name of a trapped soul calls it forth, and such a soul, stripped of humanity and driven only by instinct, would follow the speaker like a shadow, dragging them to the very place it once stood, inside the bone fence. Yet not all bones remain forever. Some nights, when the wind shifts and silence grows heavy as packed soil, one bone disappears. The Slavs believed that when a soul finally accepts its own darkness, or when the living perform the correct rite of release, Baba Yaga frees it. No one knows how she chooses, and no one dares ask. But the people trusted this disappearance the way they trusted rain after drought. If Baba Yaga has the right to hold a soul, she also has the right to return it. The bone fence, then, is not the symbol of senseless cruelty. It is a warning, a record, and a scripture of fate carved in white. It tells that in the journey through darkness, not every soul finds the exit. Some stop halfway. Some cannot face death within themselves. Some refuse to let go of the life they should have shed. And what chills the human heart is not the sight of bones standing silent beneath the moonlight. It is the knowledge that anyone who enters Baba Yaga's forest might end as part of that fence, if they fail to understand the one truth she always whispers from within the shadows. I do not choose the soul chooses its fate. It is no coincidence that stories of Baba Yaga persist across centuries, surviving villages, religions, and the borders of reason itself. They endure because they touch the deep strata of the human mind, the places where the light of logic cannot reach. Every detail, every image within her mythic world is not decoration, but the symbol of a primal fear carried by humanity since the first trembling nights of our existence. Sigmund Freud called this sensation the uncanny, the strangely familiar. It is the feeling that something which should be comforting suddenly becomes distorted, threatening, wrong. The chicken-legged hut is the perfect example. A house, something meant to protect, to shelter, stands on the limbs of an animal and spins as if trying to hurl us away from the truth we cling to. Freud said the most frightening things are not the foreign, but the familiar turned hostile. Baba Yaga, with her warped smile and kitchen tools twisted into instruments of fatal magic, is the embodiment of this inversion. She tears us from comfort and shreds the illusion that the world is as pure as we pretend. But Carl Jung, who searched deeper into human shadows, gave her a different name: the terrible mother, an archetype, not a literal parent. She is the ancient feminine force that both nourishes and destroys, a primordial power governing life and death as two faces of one coin. Vasilisa's doll symbolizes the nurturing side, intuition, quiet wisdom, the lingering touch of maternal care. But Baba Yaga, the one who tests, threatens, and devours, is the other side, the force that eliminates those unworthy of entering the world fully. Jung wrote, "To mature, one must confront the terrible mother, not flee from her. No one walks through the dark forest and leaves with the same soul." Anthropologist Arnold van Gennep describes such a journey as a rite of passage, separation, transition, re-entry. Baba Yaga oversees the entire ritual. She pulls a person out of their old world, plunges them into the liminal space where all structures collapse, and if they survive, allows them to re-emerge transformed. Her tests, sorting seeds, cooking, cleaning, seem mundane, but in the architecture of ancient ritual, they are the reordering of the inner world, chaos becoming clarity, fear becoming comprehension, despair becoming the strength to face darkness. Baba Yaga does not test with swords. She tests with the disorder inside the human heart. Vladimir Propp, the great analyst of Russian folktale structure, placed Baba Yaga in the role of the donor, the one who tests the hero before granting the tool needed to meet destiny. What is striking is that Propp did not classify her as a villain. In his structure, she is neither good nor evil, because neither matters. She tests because testing is her sacred function in the cosmic order. Those who pass deserve to continue. Those who fail are removed. The world of Baba Yaga operates according to a natural law, not a moral courtroom. When these perspectives converge, Freud, Jung, von Gennep, Propp, we see that Baba Yaga is not merely a witch in the woods. She is the necessary fear through which a person must pass to grow. Her forest is the place one must enter when childhood's reassurances no longer protect. The light glowing through the skulls is not a threat, but a truth. Anyone who steps into darkness will be seen down to the bone. Baba Yaga does not look at us with eyes. She looks at us with what we hide. Perhaps that is why her stories never vanish, despite shifting religions, modern comforts, and electric lights that push back the night. Humans always carry their own darkness, and Baba Yaga is the shape that darkness chooses to walk the forest path. Yet what makes her image powerful is not horror, but truth. Like every rite of passage, no one can walk the forest for us. The guide may be Baba Yaga, or another shadow with another name. But each soul must face the trial itself, must shed its own skin, must confront the cold light reflecting from skulls, hollow eyes. And when one steps out, if one steps out, they are no longer the person who walked in. Some ask, must one truly pass through fear to grow? To this, the ancient Slavs would answer, there is no other way. They say it not with despair, but with understanding that darkness is part of the human structure. We do not flee it. We learn to walk through it without losing ourselves. And so, on winter nights, when the wind howls through the old forest, the oldest villagers swear they hear Baba Yaga speaking, not threatening, not snarling, but in a voice like smoldering ash. I do not come to kill you. I come to see if you have the courage to live. Only when that whisper fades into the dark does the listener understand. The most frightening thing is not Baba Yaga. It is entering life without ever meeting her. It is strange to think that an ancient being like Baba Yaga, the guardian of thresholds, the shaper of souls, the mistress of glowing skulls, continues to live in the human imagination after thousands of years, in an age of electric lights, satellites, and cities so bright that day and night blur into one might assume darkness has been banished. Yet modern humans, even after leaving the deep forests behind, still unconsciously seek primordial symbols to confront fears that science cannot touch. And so Baba Yaga, once a goddess exiled into the form of a terrifying witch, is summoned again, this time into the sphere of contemporary culture. The first person to resurrect the footsteps of the chicken-legged hut in the modern era was not a writer or horror filmmaker, but a composer, Modest Mussorgsky. When he wrote The Hut on Fowl's Legs in pictures at an exhibition, the piece was not merely a musical depiction. It felt like an echo of the Slavic forest passing through the hands of the musician. The notes twist, chase, collide, and burst like claws tearing the earth. Early audience claimed they sensed the hut racing around the concert hall and Baba Yaga swooping just behind them. Mussorgsky brought primordial terror into a gilded auditorium, and it sent shivers through generations. From the concert hall, Baba Yaga wandered into Hollywood, but not in the way anyone expected. In the John Wick series, the name Baba Yaga is given to a nearly immortal male assassin whose reputation terrifies everyone. To the Slavs, this was a cultural wound. Baba Yaga has never been male, and she has never been a slayer of monsters. She is the boundary itself, the test, the cold truth. Yet the misunderstanding reveals something important. Even distorted, her name still carries the charge of ancient fear. Merely speaking is enough to make characters tremble. Her name has transcended mythology to become a symbol of the one even death steps aside for. During the Soviet era, Baba Yaga entered animation, stripped of her sacred nature. She became clumsy, comical, and sometimes a nuisance to children. But strangely, even in this softened form, her shadow never vanished. Young viewers still felt uneasy when the hut shifted. They still shivered at her raspy laughter. Although ideology tried to turn her into a reminder that primitive superstition is dead, her image continued to throb in the minds of children like a distant heartbeat from the forest. No state can fully erase an archetype rooted in collective memory for millennia. In the age of video games, Baba Yaga was reborn with new ferocity. In Tomb Raider, players enter a fog-shrouded valley where the hut becomes as alive and menacing as in the oldest tales. Lara Croft faces hallucinations, visions, and impossible shapes, all attributed to Baba Yaga's presence. The game does not claim she is truly supernatural. Instead, it blames a hallucinogenic toxin. But even with a scientific explanation, players still feel something beyond logic, as if Baba Yaga does not need to appear. Merely invoking her name invites the darkness in. Beyond games, Baba Yaga has reemerged as a global Gothic symbol. Novels, artworks, indie horror films, all portray the chicken-legged hut as a liminal space. Part home, part trap, part womb, part tomb. Cultural theorists note that the more humans attempt to detach themselves from nature, the more forcefully Baba Yaga returns. She represents wild nature, the part of the world we cannot control, tame, or reduce to equations. Yet the deeper reason for her resurgence is the rise of primordial feminism. Not gentle feminism, but wild feminism. A female figure who obeys no one, serves no one, marries no one, submits to no religion or law. She lives alone, ruling a territory men cannot enter without trials. She needs no love, no approval, no understanding. Baba Yaga defines herself. For many modern women, she is a symbol of absolute freedom, a freedom both terrifying and intoxicating. Western scholars call her the arch-feminine, the untamed feminine. Not the feminine of softness or comfort, but the feminine of frost, of skull-light fire, of the forest's impartial cruelty. The feminine of an age before the world was divided into good and evil, when life and death were simply two breaths of the same reality. Thus, when we see Baba Yaga appear in modern paintings, in electronic music, in strange television shows, or in esoteric study groups, we are not looking at the past. We are looking directly at our present. In an era where humans believe they have forgotten darkness, Baba Yaga returns to remind them that darkness has never gone anywhere. It simply waits for us to become quiet enough to hear the branches tapping at the window, the hut shifting in the underbrush, the old woman laughing softly in the corner where light cannot reach. By the end of this reflection, perhaps the question is no longer why Baba Yaga survives. The real question is, have we ever stopped needing her? When the stories, the legends, the whispers in the dark have all been told, people assume the darkness will fade. But with Baba Yaga, the darkness does not leave the listener. It merely changes shape. Sometimes it becomes the wind, threading through ancient trunks. Sometimes a faint tapping on the window during stormy nights. Sometimes the uneasy sense that something is observing from a corner you cannot see. And when you return to the Slavic forest, even if only in imagination, you realize a chilling truth. What you thought was a story has become a mirror, reflecting you back at yourself. In the realm of myth, Baba Yaga is a witch, a trial, a guardian of life and death. In culture and spirituality, she is the remnant of an ancient goddess, an archetype older than any religion. In psychology, she is the darkness each person must enter in order to become themselves. These three layers do not exist separately. They intertwine like three roots of the same tree rising from the heart of the primordial forest. On the first layer, the layer of legend, the listener meets Baba Yaga as a terrifying figure, flying in a mortar, living in her impossible hut, smiling through metal teeth. But the more you hear, the more you understand she is not meant to frighten children. She is meant to teach them. The forest is not a place for innocence. The world outside the house is not safe. And every soul must one day walk into the night alone. Myth preserves truths humans try to forget. To find yourself, you must walk where light does not reach. The second layer is cultural and spiritual. When history is examined closely, it becomes clear that Baba Yaga was not born as a villain. She was once one of the most sacred feminine forces, the embodiment of winter, time, transformation, and natural death. The Slavs did not fear her. They respected her. Only when new religions arrived was her primordial darkness twisted into evil But like anything buried deep in collective memory, Baba Yaga did not die. She changed shape, changed roles, changed the way she appeared, but her power remained. The power of boundaries. The boundary between life and death, between child and adult, between the world of order and the world of instinct. Without that boundary, humanity cannot grow. Baba Yaga is the keeper of the lamp at the gate. And the third layer, the psychological one, is where her darkness touches the individual. Freud called the chicken-legged hut the uncanny, the familiar home turned monstrous. Jung called Baba Yaga the terrible mother, the ancient feminine force every soul must face before discovering its own nature. Von Gennep called the encounter with her a rite of passage, the moment of transition from ignorance to knowledge. And Prop summarized her simply: Baba Yaga is the tester no hero can avoid. But what chills the listener is not the theory. It is the realization, subtle but undeniable, that each of us has already met Baba Yaga in symbolic form. At the moment, we were forced to grow up, in the first recognition that the world is not gentle. In the moment, we faced fear with no one beside us. Baba Yaga appears in the shape of that trial, that crisis, that closed door that forces us to knock again. The Slavic forest, the border between two worlds, has never been merely a landscape. It is the metaphor for an inner journey. The old people said that the deeper one walks into the forest, the more reality bends as if a door is about to open. Now we understand. It wasn't magic. It was the moment a person stands before transformation. And Baba Yaga, waiting on the other side, neither welcomes nor rejects. She only asks, "Do you dare to enter?" When we look back across the journey through mythology, culture, and psychology, one truth becomes clear. Baba Yaga is immortal, not because she is frightening, but because she is necessary. In a modern world that flattens every mystery, where artificial light replaces night, where people avoid imperfection, Baba Yaga becomes a reminder that darkness is not the enemy. It is part of existence. That trials do not punish, they measure the soul. And that death, with all its cold invisibility is not an end. It is one of many doors the soul must cross to know what it truly is. When the tale ends, you may insist it is only folklore. But if you listen, truly listen, you will sense something lingering in the air around you. A silence too deep, too heavy, as if the Slavic forest stands just outside, waiting for someone brave enough to step in. And then you understand that Baba Yaga's question was never meant for the characters in the story. It was meant for you. The forest does not care who you are. It only asks, "Do you dare to walk in?" And so, instead of closing, the story opens, like a dark, endless forest with no exit behind you, only an entrance ahead. Whether you step forward or not, that is the answer only you can give.